Some reptiles are just way too hard to take care of. They're too dangerous, too big, whatever the case is, these are the top 5 expert level reptiles. I'm Adam, you're watching Wicked's Wicked Reptiles, stick around. Everybody knows about the beginner reptiles, leopard geckos, ball pythons, things like that, and most of you know about the intermediate reptiles, boa constrictors, or even Ackie monitors, in my opinion, fit into that category. But what about the ones that are just too hard to take care of, too big, too dangerous, whatever, that most of us just can't handle? And some of these are actually going to be kind of surprising. So let's start off. Number 5, Savannah monitors. Yeah, $40 animal. You can buy these things for 30, 40, 50 bucks all day long at any expo, most pet shops, things like that. Well, I shouldn't say most pet shops. Pet shops that don't really have any business selling monitor lizards, basically, is where you're going to find these. Now, these aren't huge. And actually, what I can do is, let's do this. Let's lump it in there. All monitors that are large monitors that need a lot of space, and Savannah monitors. Why do Savannah monitors fit into this category? Because unlike smaller monitors, like Ackies, for example, these guys need a ton of space, and they don't really tame down that well. It's very difficult to get a Savannah monitor to tame down. Are we gonna turn it into don't get this, get that instead? Sure, get a Tegu instead. If you want something that's big and impressive, get a black and white Tegu. They're awesome, they're easier to care for, they need a lot of space, but at the end of the day, they're tameable. Big monitors, although some can be tameable, right? There are some really awesome ones, Quince monitors, Argus monitors, but at the end of the day, they're going to be a little bit more cantankerous for the most part. Now, of course, there's things like a lot of people will say that blackthroat monitors are puppy dog tame a lot of the time. That might be true, but also they get freaking huge and they need a crazy diet in order to keep them happy and healthy. So they're a little bit more difficult to care for than, say, an Ackie monitor, something like that. Not only that, but they need a really hot basking spot. Just back to Savannah monitors, since we're jumping all the way around. Savannah monitors need a ridiculously hot basking spot, or several of them, and they need a humidity level that's kind of difficult to maintain with those basking spots. So it's not like because it's a smaller lizard or not a huge lizard that you don't need a huge space. You do, and you need a ton of substrate. These things need a ton of substrate. So I don't really know how else to put it. Like, these are an expert level monitor species. These aren't something that a new person who doesn't know a bunch about reptiles should be going into and having a 20-gallon tank. Well, this thing will fit in a 20-gallon tank. Yeah, sure. For about 15 minutes, and then it's going to grow out of it. So it's kind of irresponsible, in my opinion, to be selling these animals to people who aren't bona fide experts in the reptile community. And something with all monitors is they're going to need really big enclosures. The nice thing with Savannahs is you could actually have an enclosure that is that you could buy, right? My friends at Cages, they make these awesome 4x8x4, 8x4x4, however you want to say it, 4 foot by 4 foot by 8 foot enclosures. That would be great for a Savannah, but it's going to be really expensive no matter where you get them from. And if you want to custom build it, still, it's going to be rather expensive. And if you build it out of wood, it's going to weigh a ton. So they're not easy to keep. Let's continue on with the list. Number 4, if you are an 80s or 90s kid, you saw these at pet stores when you were a kid and thought, these are going to be awesome. I can't wait to get myself an iguana. Don't do that. Iguanas are not beginner pets. They are not these animals that every pet store has. Here, take this home. It can live in a 20-gallon. No, that's not what they are. These things are monsters when they grow up. They can be up to 5 feet long. These things are huge. Like, look at this example here. This is a giant iguana. And sure, most of them don't get that big, but they do get big. And unlike the monitors that we talked about earlier, you're not going to be able to find an enclosure made by a company that you can just buy off the shelf. And those turtles are so loud. You're going to have to build one. And it's, okay, maybe if you're a handy person, you can build one no problem. But at the end of the day, it's going to take a lot of space and a lot of effort. And you're going to need a lot of height because they are an arboreal species, and a lot of length and a lot of width. And it's just overall, it's not easy to house them. And even if you can house them, once they get to a certain size, once they get to a certain point in their life, they become kind of unpredictable. And they can be, well, they can lash out at you. And if one of these guys lashes out at you, it's not just like, oh, give me a Band-Aid, Mom. No, you might be going to the hospital. These things have serious jaws. And even if they don't want to bite you, right? I'm not going to try to paint them as a monster. Even if they don't want to bite you, they'll whip you with that tail. and that tail is no joke. If you get whipped by an iguana tail, that is not a fun experience. And for that big enclosure, they're going to need some light, right? UVB light basking spots all throughout the enclosure. Kind of difficult to manage for most people. So on top of the fact that they're huge, they can be a little bit aggressive sometimes, or super defensive if you want to use that term instead. They need a big enclosure. Their diet is not super difficult, but they are mostly herbivores, so to go to the grocery store every couple days to get fresh produce, some people don't like doing that type of thing, so that's just, your personal preference, whether you like that or not. But they can be seriously dangerous. I don't want to paint them as monsters. I don't think that any reptile is a monster, but when I said monster earlier, I meant size, not that they're actual monsters. They don't live under people's beds. They shouldn't anyway. But what I mean is if they want to, they can really hurt you for real, like stitches. So, yeah, they're not for you if you're not an expert. Number 3, big constrictors. And 3 main ones in my opinion. Anacondas, rock pythons, reticulated pythons. And a lot of people are saying, well, no, not reticulated pythons, because reticulated pythons, nah, it doesn't matter. I'm talking about mainland retics mostly, because they're the longest species on Earth of any snake. And if one gets a hold of you at 20 feet long, and there's no one else around, if they want you to be dead, you're going to be dead. They might not try to eat you, they might just be an accident, but these things are seriously strong animals. And reticulated pythons are known for having crazy feeding responses. I'm sure all of us have seen this video by now. And yes, it was this lady's fault that she got bit. If you want me to do a whole reaction video, it's been requested, throw it down there, maybe I will. But there's ways that this could have not happened. But either way, they have crazy feeding responses. Now, the thing with rock pythons is they're very hard to tame down. A lot of the time, they're not that docile. So a big giant snake that's angry, that's difficult to care for. And then anacondas, same sort of thing. And anacondas have this extra aspect, and people might get really mad that I say this. Maybe a little bit controversial, but Brian Barchuk takes care of his anaconda really great, and most people can't offer this. And I know some people are going to say, well, no, it's fine, I have mine an 8 foot by 3 foot by 4 foot, whatever. Okay, well, maybe you think that's cool. I just personally think that a snake that lives most of its life in the water, or a good portion of its life in the water, in the wild, should have a giant water receptacle. And most people can't give a giant water receptacle that is this big and this well maintained. So maybe there is a way to do it where you don't have a giant receptacle of water, but still, they're huge. These things are giant animals. They're going to eat things like pigs or, stillborn goats, things like that. So the feeding is going to be very, not difficult, but expensive for any of these animals, because when they get to full size, they're going to need to eat big prey that's going to be hard to find. Now, if you live in a place that has a bunch of reptile lovers, or a bunch of places where you can buy feed like that, or if you live in a place that, you can find stillborn pigs because there's farms around you, maybe not so bad. The enclosures are going to be massive, even if it's not an anaconda, who in my opinion would benefit greatly from a water receptacle like that. But even if you had an enclosure that was 8 foot by 4 foot by 4 foot, that actually might be good for most of them. But once you get to the point where you have, say, a 23 foot retic, like you just get a monster, let's say, right? Even if it's a 20 foot or 18 foot retic, which is a little bit more reasonable, still 8 by 4 is, in my opinion, a little bit small, right? I think it's a little bit small, and I'm not trying to take your rights away and someone's going to see this and make laws. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying that you're probably going to have something that's custom built. So it is possible to take care of these things, but most people just can't. You just can't. Number 2, most expert level, in my opinion, and super surprising for a lot of you, chameleons. Now, if you've been following the channel for a while, hit subscribe if you don't mind, appreciate that. You know that I don't really think highly of chameleons for anybody except for expert people. And it's not that I think that chameleons are bad pets. I think they're awesome pets. I think chameleons are one of the most interesting and beautiful species, or collection of species of lizards that you can find, period. Everyone loves a chameleon, but they are fragile. They are more fragile than most other species. This is a leopard gecko. If I go away on vacation for a week, I give them a big water bowl. I make sure that they are fed before I leave. Everything's on timers. I get one person to check once during the week, and that's it. Chameleons, you can't do that. You need to make sure that you've got a dripper, sometimes a mister, depending on the species. Their enclosure can't be made of glass. It has to have a good airflow, so you'll need a custom enclosure for that. They're going to need a UVB light, which, whatever, it is what it is, pretty easy. But also, they're just super fragile, and some of them are very picky, and some of them you need to hand feed. Some of them will only eat off of tongs. And I know some of you with chameleons, that's not true, angrily typing. Like, put down your monster for a second there, keyboard warrior. I personally know several people who have had issues with this. In fact, I know a chameleon breeder who lives very close to here, and he says the same thing. That's why he doesn't sell to people who don't have experience with animals that are a little bit more difficult to care for. Because a lot of the times, chameleons, in my experience anyway, are the easiest to kill of most animals. Maybe baby Brazilian rainbow boas are up there, but chameleons are very difficult to take care of, depending on species. Okay, let's put this out there. A Jackson's chameleon is a lot easier to care for than, say, a panther chameleon, and the lifespan is a lot different as well. So I'm not hating on chameleons or chameleon keepers, but what I'm saying is, all the chameleon keepers that I know that have had chameleons successfully for up to their lifespan or longer have had crazy things, like literally those Wise cameras staring at it so that they can look when they're at work at their chameleon and make sure it's okay. Every single person that I've ever met that has a chameleon that is of a mature level, say like a 3, 4, 5 years old, every single person, everyone without exception, has been to the vet with their chameleon. I've never been to the vet with a leopard gecko, ever, or a ball python, for example. And now, of course, I got lucky. I'm not saying that these animals never go to the vet. What I'm saying is, chameleons are very fragile and very prone to illness a lot of the time. Chameleon people are gonna lose their freaking minds right away. Go for it. Comment section's right there. Number 1, and maybe one of the most beautiful, like exotic looking, crazy looking lizards that you could possibly find, Caiman lizards. These are amazing. I think that these guys, see, the difference between them, I was gonna put sailfin dragons on the list, but these guys look a little bit more classic. I don't know. They look more like a lizard than a dinosaur, right? But they have that really cool orangey red head and the body's a different color. And the thing is too, although sailfin dragons could take advantage of a big water receptacle, I think that for a Caiman lizard, it's a bit more important. And I've seen some amazing Caiman lizard setups, but people really have to dedicate time, space, effort into these enclosures. It's not like, I keep using the example of a leopard gecko, where it's just like, here's your bioactive substrate, water bowl, food bowl, a bunch of places to hide, wham bam, Bob's your uncle, have yourself a great day. It's constant maintenance with one of these enclosures, and these get to a substantial size. And although they're not known for being cantankerous or super defensive or even aggressive, some people would say, I mean, they're big enough that if they chomped at you by accident or whatever, it's not going to feel good. And because they do eat snails in the wild, their jaws are made for crushing things, so it would be pretty painful. Maybe you need medical attention, but these aren't one of those animals that's super prone to doing this. So let's move on to just why they're so expert level. And I think it doesn't really have to go much further than the setup, because a Caiman lizard setup, imagine something that looks like this. And I'm just ripping these pictures off the internet, some of the cool ones that I've seen on Facebook or whatever. But also I've got one of the most awesome supporters, a Patreon supporter. Special shout out to Snakery Bakery for sending me this footage. There's a video coming soon. You won't even believe what this subscriber has done for this channel. Absolutely amazing. But anyway, this is the Caiman lizard that Snakery Bakery has. And it's a beautiful specimen. It looks like it's full grown. The jaws on it, just the way that it walks, it's very dinosaur-esque. But it's just the varied diet and the big enclosure and the big water receptacle, which is the big thing. I'll just plug that before we end the list here. You need a big water receptacle, and you need a bunch of height, and you need a bunch of floor space. So it's not like, I think really the only way to do it is to build your own enclosure for this. So there's your number 1. Hard to care for, controversial, expert level reptile. Whatever we call this list, that's it. What do you think? There's a couple I left off here. Should I do a master reptile list? What do you think? Throw that down in the description below. And of course, this was episode 150, so thank you guys. Everyone who's been watching, whether you subscribed yesterday or you subscribed in January of 2019 when we started, thank you so much. And the most ridiculously special shout out to all the Patreon supporters. If it wasn't for you guys, it'd be a lot harder to feed the collection that I have. Although, I mean, maybe if I had like 10 times the amount of Patreon supporters, I could possibly afford to feed a retic one day. I don't know. Probably not. Burmese pythons are cool though. So if you're into seeing these videos several days early, extra content, sneak peeks at extra stuff, if you want to know about animals that I have that I haven't talked about on the channel, for as little as $1 a month, Patreon. And of course, I know I'm plugging basically everything, but we sell merch too. This is Littlefoot and she's on a shirt, so if you want to get one of those, or a phone case, you can. And that's it. I'm done, I promise. Hit subscribe and see you on Monday.